All right, guys, so this is our last social studies lesson, and this is going to be about Reconstruction. So, after the Civil War has ended, and we talked about the battles and we learned what life was like for the soldiers, um, now has to come this Reconstruction period. And everything I told you, even when Sherman marched to the sea and he burnt everything from Atlanta to Georgia, and that was just Georgia, it was demolished. The South was in shambles, okay? All right, so Reconstruction is about the United States becoming back together. And how is the United States going to help the South become more comfortable and help them rebuild the things that were destroyed? Okay, so if we were in class, we would have done this tangram challenge, and you would find that it's very difficult. So, what I would do is show you an image and give you tangram pieces, and you would attempt to make that using those pieces. And you see that it's very difficult because it's very hard to copy a shape and not know how to fit these shapes, these random shapes together. It's like a puzzle, right? And that's what the United States is now finding out. Reconstructing the South is going to be like putting together a very challenging puzzle. These are some actual images of what the South looked like after the Civil War. Look at these buildings. I mean, there is nothing left over. Look at all of the rubble. I mean, it is completely destroyed. All of these, this is somebody's home. All of these things are going to have to be fixed and rebuilt, okay? So it says, what was Reconstruction? Most of the South, let me see if I can find the answers to that because I have a feeling that's going to be on your um all right. So we're going to look back at the slide and it says much of the South was destroyed during the Civil War, and we've talked about that, okay? Then it says farms, homes, and public buildings had been burned down. The South needed to be rebuilt. The time after the war when the Union helped to rebuild the South was called Reconstruction. This time in history lasted from 1865 to 1877, so 12 years. And during that 12 years, the Union leaves soldiers in the South to ensure that they are not going to try to rise up again and create another civil war. Okay. During this time, President Lincoln wanted to reunite the North and the South as quickly and peacefully as possible, but he was assassinated on April 15th, 1865, by a man who supported the Confederacy, John Wilkes Booth. Okay. Lincoln never got to carry out his Reconstruction plans. Instead, Andrew Johnson stepped up into the presidency and he had to follow through with the Reconstruction plans. Okay, so let's look for goals of Reconstruction. All right, so the answers to this slide, and these are going to be in your student activity packet, so make sure that you're watching this video and listening to it carefully. The goals of Reconstruction were to reunite the South with the North, rebuild the destroyed areas in the South, and abolish slavery and protect the newly freed African Americans. But they were going to face many challenges, okay? So Congress didn't trust President Johnson because he was from the South. They wanted to form their own plan for Reconstruction apart from President Johnson. Under Johnson's plan, he allowed the Southern states to pass what were called the Black Codes. These laws denied blacks the right to vote, own land, or guns, and even more. Many Southerners resented Congress for trying to change their way of life. Results of the Reconstruction. Congress and President Johnson disagreed on many things during the time of Reconstruction. Congress grew so angry at Johnson that they tried to impeach or remove him from office. Congress was not successful in impeaching President Johnson, but they were able to accomplish the following things. Congress required the Southern states to rewrite their state constitutions to protect the rights of blacks. Congress also established the Freedmen's Bureau, which was an organization that helped former slaves. The Bureau built them hospitals, schools, and helped them find jobs. And last, Congress also helped to rebuild roads, schools, farms, and businesses. So let's look at some more results of Reconstruction. Congress was able to pass three new amendments. Remember, amendments are changes or additions to the U.S. Constitution. So we added the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery. The 14th Amendment, which gave African Americans citizenship and the right to equal protection under the law. So it means they should be protected under the law as much as anybody else that is considered a U.S. citizen. And then the 15th Amendment, which was eventually passed, gave African American men the right to vote. But remember, women still don't have that right. So the Civil War has ended. Every man in the United States can vote, but women still can't. Okay. Let's talk about what life was like after Reconstruction. Reconstruction officially ended in 1877, and all the former Confederate states had been allowed back into the Union. However, the Southern leaders regained power in their state governments and began passing laws that restricted African American rights. So, some states made it difficult for blacks to vote by setting up voting booths far away from their communities. They required a tax to vote that they know people couldn't afford. And they required a reading test. And they knew that all of these blacks couldn't read because they weren't allowed to learn. They weren't allowed to have an education. Then some states passed Jim Crow laws. These laws work to keep public places segregated, and these are eventually what are fought to get rid of when Martin Luther King Jr. comes around 100 years later. Okay. Even though blacks were free, many whites still discriminated against them. One group called the Ku Klux Klan or the KKK was formed. This group was very mean to blacks and they would often hurt or kill them just because of their skin color. That's ridiculous. Many blacks could not afford land and were forced to return to their former plantations to participate in a system called sharecropping. In this system, blacks would rent land from landowners by paying them back with a portion of their crop. Unfortunately, the cost of renting the land and the supplies were often higher than what the black people were able to make on profits. All right, so different perspectives of the Reconstruction. So I have attached some quote cards that are on your slide. You can go and read those, and it'll give you different opinions based on who we're talking about. And if you look closely at the bottom here, you can also click on this to talk about um, things in the South. Okay. All right. And remember, guys, as you fill out this independent practice, you're going to have to go back through this video because I've given all of the answers in this video. And if you need any help, make sure you contact me.